real-life stories from everyday people in recovery, from mental health issues, trauma, substance misuse, and behavioural addictions. Please visit the website www.lifeinrecovery.co.uk for links to social media and a range of books written by your podcast host, Ren Coy.
Well, let's just start from the very beginning. So where are you from in the States?
I was born in a place called Utica, New York, which is not far from Syracuse, New York. We are about 4.5 hours outside of New York City. That's where I was raised.
Cool. And what was life like growing up for you?
You know, very lower middle class. You know, we never had a struggle for food, but there really wasn't much left around, you know, so it was okay. You know, it was an okay youth. I'd say the most important thing to me growing up was basketball. Started at the age of 5, ended up playing 2 years at Syracuse University, which is one of the biggest universities in the United States for basketball. So all the work paid off, but at the end of those 2 years, I didn't have what it took, Ren, to make it to the next level. The guys coming up underneath me were too damn good, you know. So I had to end my career a little earlier than what I thought I would. But really, I had a pretty average upbringing. But I want to make a really important point about what does that mean? You know, a pretty average upbringing. I wasn't raised in a family of alcoholics, although alcoholism rages in our family history. But my mom and dad, you know, my dad did drink too much for sure. It was highly accepted, but there was never any type of problems. You know, there was never the police. My father never. I mean, he spanked us because, you know, I'm quite old, Ren. So when I was a kid, spanking was totally acceptable. Using a belt, totally acceptable. Whatever, a spoon, whatever was in your hand was acceptable. So there was a lot of corporal punishment. You know, there was, you know, a lot of spankings, a lot of things that people would say today would be child abuse. I'm not going to say if it is or isn't. We don't want to get into that discussion, but I do want to make this one really important point. The reason I got into so much trouble as a child was because of the fact that I am so incredibly sensitive and emotional, just like every addict and alcoholic in the world. You know, we think of alcoholics. I don't care if they're living underneath the bridge. I don't care if they're selling crack cocaine. Everyone who's in the world of addiction is extremely sensitive individuals. Now, they may have been traumatized and become hardened in life, but we're all so super freaking sensitive, which is one of the reasons why cross addiction is the big thing these days. You know, it's no longer that we celebrate someone who's in recovery from alcoholism and say that's great, because most people who celebrate recovery, all they've done, Ren, quite frankly, is cross-addicted to nicotine, caffeine, pot, spending, sex, whatever it might be. There's very few people in the world of recovery from alcoholism that can look in the mirror and say, I have no cross-addictions. You know, so I don't celebrate years. I don't believe in saying, so if you were to say to me, how many years have you been sober? I would say to you, Ren, a long time.
Yeah.
And the reason why is I don't believe in the bullshit of 22 years. You can be 22 years sober and a complete dick, Ren. You can be 22 years sober and abuse your children. You can be 22 years sober and be a jerk in the office. You know, it's not about the length of time of recovery. It's, have you mastered your emotions? Because in our world, in my practice that we've been now helping people get sober for 30 years, is we say to people, the beginning of alcoholism is not your genes.
No.
It's not genetics. Genetics, as a matter of fact, in my opinion, Ren, has about that much to do with alcoholism.
Yeah.
So we'll go to my story. I became an addict at the age of 8 to sugar. I found that if I ate enough sugar, because I was such a sensitive child, that if I was angry, there was no room in my household for anger. This is pretty common. Not too many parents are raised on how to deal with children's emotions, you know? No. So the only thing that was acceptable in our household was happiness. So if I was dejected, bored, hurt, angry, resentful, shameful, filled with guilt, there was no room for that. It was like, you get over it. You'll meet a new girl tomorrow. She wasn't good enough for you anyway. You know, the coach was an idiot. Don't worry about it. You didn't play as much as you could have. That wasn't your fault. Your coach is an idiot. Let it go. Tomorrow's a whole brand new day. You know, like, so when you are raised in an environment and you're a super sensitive individual, like all alcoholics and addicts are, I just mentioned, you're going to try to find a way. If acting out, and I acted out perfectly. I was a real challenge as a child. So I was always angry, always upset, always mad at something. And then at 8, I found sugar. And I found that if I ate enough sugar, it would numb my anger. Mm. And that was fascinating to me, you know. So, and this, my story is not unusual at all. And then at 12, I was introduced to alcohol. And the reason why, and again, I was introduced to alcohol to try to numb my emotions. But the number one reason I went after alcohol was because I wanted to hang out with the 14 and 16-year-old guys. Mm. And the only way to do it was to drink. So I had my first warm Budweiser beer that tasted like crap. But because they were drinking it, I wanted to hang out with them. And that was the beginning of my addiction, you know. At 14 was pot, at 15 was cocaine, at 16 was Quaaludes, at 7, I mean, the list goes on and on. LSD, psilocybin mushrooms, you know. I was injected with heroin multiple times. It never connected with me. I had a roommate. I was very lucky. Very lucky, right? And so we'd be up all night, you know, doing cocaine and alcohol. And then, you know, of course, I'd be looking for Valium to try to sleep, Xanax, something to try to get some sleep. And he'd go, "Oh, dude, let me just shoot you up." He said, "You'll go into this mellow state and you'll fall asleep." And, you know, Ren, it's so true. I mean, God was definitely on my side here. There was one night, I bet he injected me 6 or 7 times. I never felt a thing.
Wow.
The next week, he did it a couple more times, never felt a thing. And I said, don't even bother. It's a waste of your money, waste of, you know. So I was blessed with that. But I want to mention something else. You know, if your friends and your followers go to my website, they're going to see what perceives to be an extremely confident individual. They're going to see pictures of me on stage. You know, the largest group I've spoken in front of is 5,000 people. That's a lot of people. When you're speaking in front of 5,000 people, the room is completely pitch black, and all you have are jumbotrons on either side of the stage. You see about 3 people, you know? So you would think someone who has achieved what I've achieved would be a very confident person. And yet, underlying my world of addictions, which is much more than alcohol, underlying my world of addictions was an incredibly insecure introvert who chose a career in extroversion.
Yeah. I mean, that I echo. Every word that's just come out of your mouth is my story as well. I mean, I chose to be a DJ for many years because of, you know, the extroversion that allowed me to, and every gig that I played, I had to drink and I had to take drugs beforehand to allow me to perform on that stage, you know. And once the drinking and the drugs had finished, I realized that it was no longer for me because I'm not that person, you know. And this is about as extroverted as I get wearing this shirt.
Which I complimented on you on because I love it, dude. I think it's a great shirt.
Yeah. Well, I decided because I've started doing these on YouTube now on the videos. I thought, well, I'm gonna wear some nice shirts, you know, and look good for the video. But yeah, I echo everything that you've just said. And I wrote a book about 5 years ago called Addiction Prevention, and the way I explained addiction, it was in 3 simple steps. The first step is that it is an emotional disorder, so we're unable to manage our emotions. That emotional disorder then becomes mental health issues because unable to manage emotions, washing machine head, thoughts going a million miles an hour, unable to control those thoughts and have any kind of peace of mind and clear direction. And then what do? Step 3, we try to medicate that head with drugs or behaviors and become addicted to them. So as you said, very, very little to do with genetics. And there's been a study by Harvard that showed that it's not, you know, if it is genetic, it's less than it's a less of a percentage than the actual environmental factors. So I'm in complete agreement with you there. And you know, all the work that you've done and the work that I've done in my life as well proves that as well, because I'm not addicted to those things in the same way that I was. And you mentioned cross addiction earlier. I'm still cross-addicted onto sugar. I do still eat sugar. And I was reading in your book, actually, one of the things it says is stop, cut sugar out completely out of your life, because if you're an addict, you're gonna use it addictively. And I'm on that path at the moment. That's something that I've been kind of working on for the last couple of years. So yeah, I'm 100% with you there. So you're in your kind of like late teens, and it's progressing, and through the drugs, and the heroin's not worked. So what kind of happened after that?
Yeah, I just became extremely successful as a highly functioning alcoholic addict, Ren. That's what happened. It's amazing what you can pull off as a full-blown alcoholic addict, and there is only one person. Now, listen, I was in that for over 30 years. Cocaine and alcohol were my drugs of choice. But if we have a chance, I'm also going to want to talk about codependency. So, I got into this, and I found that if I planned it correctly, I could continue to grow my career, grow my following, make more money every year, and still be an alcoholic addict. Like, we are so damn clever. Yeah. And after I recovered and started helping other people recover, and I said, if we would take our cleverness, if we would take everything that we did to pull off finding drugs when there's none around, finding alcohol when there's none around, we're creative dudes, man. If we
finding a woman when there's no one around.
Yeah, exactly. It's like whatever your drug of choice is, right? Like if we could take that determination to get high, the determination to find our drug of choice, if we put that into our career, our children, our community, my God, we could change the world, and that's eventually, I came to a point, and so I went through a good portion of my career. I was helping people get sober while I was a raging alcoholic, but, I knew how to time it. So, I set my days up to give me plenty of time to recover in the morning. And then I'd work later at night. So there was never a question. I was never hungover with sessions, because I would start, let's say, at noon or 2 Eastern time. So by then I had a chance to get up. I had a chance to have something to eat. I would fill myself with fluids because I knew I was dehydrated. And then when the session started at noon or 1, I was right on it, man. I was smack on it.
So at that time, you were counseling people. Was that what you were doing?
Oh God, Ren, I was doing everything I'm doing today, brother. I was getting so many people sober while I'm a raging alcoholic. Yeah. I'm helping people build huge businesses, recover their marriages, lose 150 pounds. Everything I'm doing today, I was doing back then. But I was doing it and thinking that I was getting away with something. But the thing that we forget about in the world of you mentioned mental health is that the longer the addiction, the lower the self-esteem. Yeah. So here we are struggling with self-esteem anyway, because of what self-esteem for our listeners is self-love. So we're struggling loving ourselves. And of course, addiction is the exact opposite of self-love. So, we're struggling and we're struggling and we're struggling. And really what we're trying to do is find what's this magical answer to life that's going to make me feel better. And what's this magical answer that's going to make the pain go away. And my low self-confidence and my low self-esteem and my anger and resentment and rage and jealousy and insecurity, like we don't know what the hell to do. And so my turning point was a very bizarre turning point. I had never gotten a DUI. I've been an entrepreneur for 40 years, so I'm not going to fire myself, Ren. I was very smart to work for myself. But I got to this point. I'm dating a woman. She never drank. I never asked her anything about her drinking. I continued. I was never an abusive alcoholic. I didn't get drunk and hit women or just throw them out windows or anything like that. And so we're on one of my birthdays, and I took her on a trip, and all of a sudden she kept going into the bathroom one night, and I finally knocked on the door, and she said, "Come on in." And I came in, and now, Ren, this is a woman that never cried. I hadn't seen a tear for all the time I dated her. Didn't really show much emotion, more zombie-like, which is weird because she was very like me, except I have a career that I'm extroverted. But if I'm not doing this work with you, or if I'm not working with counselors, I am low key, dude. I'm not the most fun person on the block. I'd rather be with a book. I'd rather be doing something. Gardening. I love to garden. That's me. That's the real David Essel. So she says, "Come out here. I need to talk to you right now." And when you hear that from a woman, it's not a good thing. And so my first thought is, oh shit, I got her pregnant. That was my very first thought. I go, oh my God, now I'm going to have a baby. And so we go out and we sit down. And of course, on the way out, I filled up a massive goblet of wine, because I knew that this was not going to be good. So I had my reinforcements, Ren, in my hand. And we sat down and she looked at me dead in the eyes and she said, "You're going to leave me soon." And I said, "What are you talking about? We're on this great vacation. We're having fun." And she said, "No. No, you're going to leave me soon, David." I said, "Why? Why do you say that?" And she said, "Because at one point soon, alcohol is going to be more important than me.
Oh.
And if it doesn't happen now, it'll happen in a month or 6 months or a year. And I've just come to the realization that you're going to be leaving me." And, I was really upset. I said, you don't know how much I love you then. You're not seeing. And I went on to and she stopped me and she said, "David, that glass in your hand is more important than anyone in your life." And Ren, it woke me up. Because and now, she never said, "I'm going to leave you." She never said, "You better quit drinking." She never said, "I wish you would cut back." She never said a thing about me other than I was going to leave, And so then we got into a 2.5-hour discussion and she told me her life story, which I did not know what her life story was. Her children, when she was married, were taken away by the state because of her alcoholism.
Wow.
So she knows, and she knew that even with freaking children, that her alcoholism was more important than her children. Now, she got her kids back, right? And she got sober, and she just hit me right here. Now, you know this as well as anyone. 1,000 people could have told me that, and if it wasn't the right time for me to hear it, I would never have heard it.
No.
But somehow it got through. So then the next day I said to her, we happened to be flying back home the next day, and I said, "Hey, what treatment center did you go to?" Because I said, and I lied. I said, "I just got a text from a client, and it was an email, and they want to go to a treatment center, and I didn't know where to send them." So she told me. So the minute the flight lands, she's unpacking, I'm on the phone checking into the rehab center.
Yeah.
And that was the turning point. One woman saying, "You're going to leave me." And, that goes to something else I think is really important. In our opinion, Ren, there's no such thing as a bottom. There is no such freaking thing. A bottom, I'll give you our definition of a bottom. Our definition is you made a choice. That's the definition of a bottom. You made a choice to get help. You made a choice to raise your hand. You made a choice. That's all it is. A bottom is a freaking choice. I had a woman I worked with who had 3 DUIs. They said, "Your 4th one, your license is taken away for life." So she did great for 30 days. And then she said, "You know what? I'm good." She hit the pink cloud, right? She's riding the pink cloud. And the pink cloud is telling her, "Oh my God, you haven't drank in 30 days, girl. You don't need this stuff." She gets another one. She loses her license. And then I read in the paper that she got driving a bicycle while intoxicated was the next thing. So after she lost her car license, they arrested her for smashing her bike into a tree drunk, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now I say that for a point. There is no such thing as a bottom. Her losing her license didn't even come close to being a bottom for her. And a bottom is a choice. Her genetics didn't force her. When we talk about genetics, Ren, and I love this topic, this is what I say to everyone. If alcoholism was truly caused by our genetics, the only way Ren and I could be sober today would have been some genetic modification, pharmaceutical, or surgery. If it's a genetically caused condition, it doesn't freaking go away because you change your emotional state. It doesn't go away if you're born with muscular dystrophy. And I'm really sorry for people that are or who have children that are. That's a genetic disease. You can't go to a meeting, to a counselor, to a therapist, and come out of that without muscular dystrophy. You can be 50, 60, 80 years into a freaking addiction. And if you make a choice to work with the right person, you can leave it no matter how many years. And that's when I say to people, throw that genetic card out the damn window. There's millions of people over the course of time that have never touched a drop of alcohol again, and they did it out of choice.
Yeah.
They didn't do it because of medical intervention. So let's throw the genetics to the wayside. Now, even saying that, I'm not saying that there isn't a gene in the body. You know, the reason why my brother and I, you know, he's sober just a couple years now, which I'm proud as hell of him. You know, the gene is in our family. We used to say years ago, when someone would say, hey, do you want to go out and grab a drink? We'd look at each other and laugh. And then we'd look at him and go, you're not being serious, are you? And they go, what? You said, we'll go out with you for drinks, but we're not going to go out just to have a drink.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, that's the alcoholic mindset, right? It's like, okay, we know that 1 is not enough, and we know that 10 is not enough, or whatever it is before you black out, you know, but we also know that the gene didn't pull your car into the pub. The gene didn't pull your car into the liquor package store. The gene didn't come out of your shirt, grab the bottle of wine, and pour it down your damn throat. That's all called choice, choice, and choice again.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean it's easy, you know, and the longer that you're an alcoholic and addict, sometimes that makes it more challenging to break all of the habits, all of the associations that we have with your addiction. I don't want anyone to think this stuff is easy. You know, when I went to the treatment center, that next year was hard as shit. My first year of sobriety was not easy. I'm not a big 12-step fan. I went for 130 days in a row because I promised my counselor in the treatment center I would go, and I didn't want to break my word. But the reason why, I think the number one benefit of any 12-step meeting anywhere in the world is you're walking into the room and you're raising your hand and you're saying, I have a problem, which means you're humble and you're honest. And it's hard to be humble and honest. And I think that's the greatest benefit of 12-step meetings. But I have huge concerns over their philosophies. You know, once an addict, always an addict. What kind of crap is that? I don't believe that at all. I don't think I'm ever going to go back and drink or snort coke or do anything like that again. I have a program, and it's called the lifestyle. And as long as I live my lifestyle, you know, in 2008, the U.S. economy crashed. I lost every home that I owned. I owned 4 homes. I lost every one. I lost every penny to my name. I had to start in 2008. I had to start my career all over again. Ren, I had no alcohol in my life when I went down to nothing and when I was busting my ass to come back. So that tells you it's a choice. And that's the most important thing. But I had to work. I had to spend a lot of money. I had to hire counselors. I had to do what they tell me to do. And Ren, I don't like doing what other people tell me to do. I don't like that, you know? And it's part of my self-centered, quote unquote, mindset of the addict alcoholic. You know, we think we know what's best for us. We think we know the right way. You know, we're arrogant as shit. It doesn't matter, you know? And so a lot of my growth over the years of sobriety, and I still have to work on it every day. I'm not there. It doesn't end. But I don't call myself a recovering alcoholic. I think that's bullshit. I call myself David Essel. I don't call myself a recovering cocaine addict. I call myself David Essel. I don't call myself a recovering codependent in love relationships, which was another massive addiction of mine. I call myself David Essel because we do know this about psychology. If you're walking into a damn meeting every day of the week and you're saying, hi, I'm David, I'm an alcoholic, good luck being happy in recovery. Really good luck. The 12-step program where I said it does have a benefit. And now there are some people who might be watching right now that go, my life was saved by 12-step and I'm happy and I didn't cross addict. And I treat my family awesome. And I'll say to them, don't change a thing. If you're not cross-addicting and you're happy, don't keep going. Go to 20 meetings a week. I don't give a crap how many you go to. But that's 10% of the 12-step population might reach that stage, Ren. And the reason why is they're operating out of principles 80 years ago. They've never updated a damn thing. We know if you tell yourself every day you're an alcoholic, that's not good for your self-confidence, self-esteem, or moving forward in life. Now, if you're drinking every day and you're calling yourself an alcoholic, well, that's just being honest. I have no problem with that. Someone say, I'm an alcoholic because I drink every day and I drink till I pass out, or I'm a binge drinker once a month. I'm an alcoholic because once a month I binge drink, which is true. You can be an alcoholic one day a year. If you binge drink one day a year, you would be considered an alcoholic. And the reason I say that is that on that day, if you got behind the wheel of a car and got pulled over, your ass is in jail, which means you made a really dumb move. And a non-alcoholic person would never put themselves in that position. They wouldn't. They're a little smarter than that. So there is a role that the gene plays, and the role could be when you consume just enough alcohol, the gene is released, which craves more, and that's the endless pit. That's where there's no, but that still didn't get you in the pub. It didn't get you to open the bottle. It didn't get you to have the seventh drink. The gene did nothing other than wait for you to activate it. So we throw that crap out the window and we say, listen, if you want to be sober for life, you can be sober for life. You're going to have to work. If you have to lose 400 pounds, you can lose 400 pounds. I have a story in the book Focus of a woman that is a great friend. 240 pounds she lost. She went on to become a bodybuilder in her 50s. Right?
Yeah.
Do you remember that story?
Yeah.
Great story. Same thing with alcoholism. Her 250 pounds is our 250 pounds of emotional weight called alcoholism. Well, she cannot screw around if she wants to keep the body she has. It becomes a lifestyle. She doesn't want to lose the body she has. It's been great for her, her family, for everyone. So in order to keep her body, she has to do, Ren, as you well know, everything she's been doing to get there in the first place. So when the alcoholic becomes sober, goes into recovery, and they're no longer an alcoholic, they stay alcohol-free by following a daily ritualistic program called a lifestyle. Now, let me ask you, what's your lifestyle on a daily basis? What are your rituals that you make sure you do every day so that you keep this straight so we don't go back to our addictions?
Well, it's in everything that you've said there is very interesting because I do adhere to the majority of it. I get up every morning. The program that I learn and the lifestyle that I lead now as a result of going into recovery. I'm a 12-stepper, so I've gone into AA and have been sober for over 10 years. But I developed essentially my own program, really, which is I get up in the morning, I pray, I meditate, I do some spiritual readings. I go about my day. I have a bit of I do exercise every day. In the evenings, I pray, meditate, do a written inventory, gratitude list. And also, since I've been working with Dennis, I've been doing that work as well. So, lots of written work, focusing on whatever the thing is at the time, whether it's my relationship or the career or whatever I'm focusing on. And I schedule and I have a very strict schedule and disciplined routine with the work that I do. And as a result, I'm successful at the things that I do. So I've kind of the part of it which speaks to me is that if you're just going to any recovery meetings, so whether it's 12-step meetings or smart recovery or whatever the recovery is, and all you're doing is going to those meetings just to talk about your life, you're not really going to change that much. And for me, it was about learning. It was about that bridge to normal living. So I do still go to meetings. I don't go as regularly as I used to, but I do still go to meetings. And the only reason that I go now is to try to pass that message on to other alcoholics and addicts. Whereas previously, I suppose I used to use it as a bit of a crutch, really, somewhere to go and to offload my stuff and to kind of, feel better about myself for that 1 hour. But then I'd come back to my life and it'd be, the same old shit on the hamster wheel. So it took me a long, long time to get to that place where ultimately my barometer is peace of mind. I wake up every morning and, very, very rarely will I wake up anxious or stressed or depressed. And if I did, then I would know that there was something really, really wrong. And, you know, and when there's an area of my life that I feel as though needs some work, then I will do some step work as well with my sponsor, but primarily I will probably look at the different avenues that I can go down to work on that particular thing. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. And I think the only thing about the label of the alcoholic, and I agree with what you're saying, if you're going to a meeting and you're constantly saying, you know, I'm an alcoholic, and that's reinforcing that. But I suppose for me personally, you know, I see it as reminding myself that I can't drink alcohol. That's the one reason why I say it. But also, I'm a recovered alcoholic as well. You know, like the hopeless state of body and mind of the alcoholic is completely eradicated from my life. So I don't say I am an alcoholic. I say I'm a recovered alcoholic.
Yeah, you know, when the last meeting, 12-step meeting I went to on the 130th day, I hadn't got a sponsor. You know, in the treatment center, I had a sponsor. You know, my counselor was my sponsor in the treatment center for 30 days. The very last day I'm there, I had talked to a bunch of sponsors, but to me, you know, there were at least in the United States and the city I live in, there was too many Jesus Christ sponsors. Where that, you know, you had to read the Bible, and you know, and that's not. And I'm a minister, but please don't try to cram any religion down my throat, because you're going to get pushed back really hard. And so I was attracting all these potential sponsors that, you know, didn't have mindsets that I liked. And then on the way out the door in the last meeting, and again, and this is why I say the thing I love about meetings is going in, raising your hand, and saying I'm vulnerable. This guy comes up to me who I'd seen several times, and he didn't speak much in the meetings, which I really liked, because too many people just talk to talk. They just want to hear themselves talk. And this guy would, every once in a while, Ren, he'd say something, and it was wise as hell. You know, it was like you knew this guy. So long story short, we're out in the parking lot talking, and he said, hey, I haven't seen you with a sponsor. Do you have one? I said, no. He said, why not? And I said, you know, most of them are too pushy. I said, they're telling me I have to call them every day at 7 a.m. I said, I'm not calling anyone every day at 7 a.m. I'm sorry, that's just not my gig. You know, and I said, there's parts of this program I think that are fine, but I said, why are you asking? He said, because you and I are really similar. He said, I don't like rules either. and he goes, when it was your turn to raise your hand and to say, hi, I'm David, and I'm an alcoholic, he said, you didn't do it. I said, no, I didn't. He said, do you remember what I said? And I said, yes, I do. He goes, what did I say? I said, you said, hi, I'm Phil, and I'm really grateful to be here today.
Yeah.
And Ren, I love that answer. It has nothing to do with addiction. It has nothing to do with alcoholism. I'm grateful that I'm here. I'm grateful that I'm here to share. I'm grateful that I'm here to learn. Right away, I said, you just got yourself a sponsee. I go, dude. And then when I got to know him, Ren, he was the coolest guy in the world, because he was an undercover cop for 17 years, so he could keep his alcohol and cocaine habit fed every day.
Brilliant.
He purposely became a drug undercover agent so he could party every day of the week. Is that wild?
That is as covert as you can get, really.
It really is, you know. And then eventually he got caught too many times, right? And then then he got fired from the police department, and you know. But he was the coolest guy, and so he goes, tell me the parts of the 12-step that you agree with and understand, and I would tell him. He'd go, fine. And then he'd say, you know, you already told me you don't like to, you know, you're not going to ever call yourself an alcoholic again. I said, not unless I relapse. But I said, I don't plan on that happening. I'm going to work my ass off. And he was the one that gave me the confidence. And he said to me, I'll tell you what, David, why don't you create your recovery program? And why don't you bring it to me? So instead of him shoving down my throat what he thought was right for me, Ren, he used the best psychology in the world.
Yeah.
He said, I want to empower you. I want you to come to me with a program. No, you don't have to call me every day. He goes, how about we meet once a week for 20 minutes? In other words, he could sense the type of person I was, and he made the program work for me.
Yeah.
So then when I came to him with my recovery program, and it's very similar to yours, Ren, you know, the first hour of every day is journaling, meditation, prayer, reading. You know, I don't, there's no social freaking media. There's no checking the news. There's no checking text and email. There's no checking phone messages. The phone stays off for the first hour of every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when I'm with my real powerful David Essel recovery, right? And then throughout the day, just like you said, you know, I work out 6 days a week. I eat super clean. Now, going back to sugar, when I quit the first year, which was so hard, I was filled with a ton of anxiety being without alcohol. I found that if I ate a half of a carrot cake every night, God's honest true story, a half of a big freaking carrot cake, I could go to sleep and I'm fine. Because for most adults, sugar is a relaxant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, for kids, it's all about hyperactivity. But the brain changes over time. So when you hear of all these people that before bedtime have a bowl of ice cream, have cookies, have this, have that, well, there's a reason for it. Number one, sugar numbs your emotions. If you're bored, angry, upset, whatever it might be, within a small amount of sugar, because it acts in the same pleasure center of the brain as alcohol, you're not feeling bored anymore. So now you're in front of your telly, as they say in your area, and you know you're in front of your telly, and it's 9 o'clock at night, and you've got your chips. Salt does the same thing that sugar does, by the way. Salt numbs the emotions in the brain. So you've got your salt, you've got your sugar, you've got your fat, which is usually included in one of those foods. Your brain is numbed out, dude. You are just like after having a couple bourbons, beers, wines, a couple hits of pot, whatever your drug of choice is. Food is a drug. So for the first year, every night, I ate a half of this huge piece of carrot cake, or half of a whole carrot cake. And, I had a friend of mine, a woman, come and spend about 3 or 4 days with me. And the first day she gets there, she opens up, she goes, "Oh, you had a party last night." And I'm sitting there going, "I don't even drink. What is she?" I go, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Oh, it looks like you had a bunch of people over. There's only a little piece of cake left." and I said, "No, it was me." And she looked at me. She goes, "Oh my God, you're teasing me." I said, "No." And then she looked at me. She goes, "David, you're a sugar addict." Yeah. And Ren, it didn't even hit me. Because in the rooms, the people that were saying, "Oh, don't worry about sugar, nicotine, caffeine, as long as you're not drinking." Well, let me tell you, the founder of AA died of lung cancer from smoking.
Yeah, you did, yeah. Yeah.
There's a massive cross addiction.
Yeah.
And while I wasn't there back then, my guess is that when he quit drinking, I bet his smoking increased dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a great piece of advice for somebody in early recovery, but the problem is that it then manifests into this cross addiction. And I echo everything that you said. My drug of choice was 4 ice creams every night for years, and I think that, like, progressively, as you progress spiritually and emotionally and physically, in the sense that you get more well, as time goes by, because you're working on yourself more. Obviously, that addiction decreases. So, I'm not eating 4 ice creams a night, but when it gets to 9 o'clock in the evening, that's my danger zone every single night, So I have to, and it's that kind of like argument that goes on in my head, of like, am I going to have some tonight? Am I not? And if I'm not focused on it, and I'm not using, like, I've got these elastic bands on my wrist, and I use those to to get my mind out of the loop, out of that habitual loop. So I'm using the tools to escape that. But yeah, it is, and for anybody, like, obviously, like, I'm part of the 12-step community, so like, I know a lot of people out there, and a lot of people that will be watching this and listening to this. I talk about it all the time in the meetings, and it's probably not the most popular of conversations. I know. Because it's true, because most of us that go to the rooms, we do eat loads of sugar, or we do smoke loads, or we do get into relationships and become sex addicts. There's always some form of cross addiction, unless the only people that I've kind of come across that have, kind of managed to not go down that path tend to be people that are absolutely 100% honest at all times, you know, and have got, you know, usually they've got a loving relationship with somebody that they can be completely honest with as well, so that they don't tend to need an outlet for their emotional issues. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. But even with that, even if you have someone to share, you know, in our training, we say to people, all of this needs to be put in writing. And I'll explain something, you know, that you probably are very well with, Ren, maybe a lot of your followers are too, but there's two parts of the brain. There's the conscious mind, and I'm going to point to the front of my skull when I say the conscious mind. That's the mind of intent. Not going to eat ice cream tonight. I'm not going to eat ice cream tonight. I'm not going to eat ice cream tonight. You know, and so we go through and we say all that, or, you know, I'm going to cut back on whatever it is, spending or whatever, right? Now, the biggest problem in the world isn't your intentions, but your intention is not going to change a habit based in the subconscious mind, which I'm going to point to the back of my head. Thoughts are not powerful enough to change a habit that the subconscious has taken because we've given it to it, right? So let's say that you've stopped drinking, but we'll use sugar because it's such a sugar, nicotine, and caffeine are the three go-tos substance-wise. Sex addiction is number 4, but the first 3 substances that people go to in their cross addiction that they will justify as being better than alcohol would be those 3, you know? So what we have to realize is this: the subconscious mind has accepted your pattern that you fed it, that instead of dealing with boredom at night, I'm going to drink, smoke, eat sugar, or whatever. Okay, it's a pattern we fed.
Yeah.
So over the years, at 801 is when I would start drinking. So my first year of recovery at 801, I would start eating carrot cake. And now, in my mind, and my friends and family and everyone else said, oh my God, that's the greatest move in the world. You know, now, as a temporary move, it would have been. But unfortunately, Ren, too many people don't have someone like my friend that came in and said, did you have a party last night that woke me up to realize that I was a sugar addict now? Most of us hide our cross addictions. Yeah. I'm going to repeat this because this is important. Most of us hide our cross addictions from ourselves and others. So if we're out to dinner and someone comes by with a huge dessert tray, and we have 5 or 6 people around, and we say, no, I'm not interested in dessert, and then we go home and we eat a ton of freaking sugar. Now, that's called self-deception, it's called lying, and it's called a lack of integrity. But if you go to meetings where coffee pots are constantly being filled, cookies and brownies are brought in, people are outside smoking their heads off. Let's say an alien comes from another planet. They'd walk in and go, wow, there's a room full of self-destructive people. Look at these people are killing themselves. They don't even know anything about alcohol, right? But they're seeing these people, you know, eating sugar, smoking cigarettes, drinking tons of caffeine at 8 o'clock at night, for God's sake, right? And so we say, listen, take the best. And for our listeners, again, take the best of every program out there. In our holistic addiction recovery program, we take the best out of 12-step. We take the few things that I think are just freaking killer, and we'll keep using them. But then, listen, there's brain chemistry supplementation out there called amino acid therapy that can help cut the cravings of all addictions. There are other amino acids and other supplements like 5-HTP, ashwagandha. There's a ton of other stress relieving that we can use instead of going to sugar and nicotine and caffeine. So, you know, there's a ton of information out there, you know, like meditation. Very few programs teach meditation at all, you know, not the way that it's really going to be beneficial. And so what we need to do is, in my opinion, for 12-step people, take the best out of 12-step, but don't get stuck and sucked into that hierarchy, because one of the things they create are codependent people trying to stay away from alcohol. And the codependent statement is, as long as you keep coming back to these meetings, you'll be fine. And that's bullshit. You know, that's creating codependent people. They're saying you can't do this on your own. You're never going to be able to make it on. What kind of confidence does that build? Now, I've been teaching addiction recovery for 30 years. What do you think, Ren, my clients would say is, if I said to them, hey, listen, I'm going to help you get sober, but you have to work with me for the rest of your life. What do you think they'd say, Ren?
First thing they'd probably say is, I can't afford it.
Exactly. You know, but let's say they could afford it.
Yeah. They'd probably say, I'm not willing to do that.
No, hell no. You know, I don't think anyone should be codependent on any program. I don't care if it's pain management, addiction. I think there's got to come a time where that we learn everything we can from the program, and then we elevate ourselves, because there's always another program out there offering something new and updated and different. And I think we need to go, wow, I got everything out of this. This has been great. 12-step has been awesome. I had a great sponsor. I met a lot of great people, but I'm at this plateau. Now, after listening to David and Ren, I see I drink too much caffeine, I smoke too many cigarettes, I eat too much sugar, and yeah, I masturbate 4 times a day, and maybe I am a sex addict. Or I'm going behind my partner's back and having emotional affairs to get this fed, to get dopamine jumping into my brain so I feel alive, right? So we say, okay, I got as far as I got with the 12-step. I want to stay friends with the people I met here. I'm going to go once a week or whatever it is to have my social hour. But let me bring my game to the next level. Are you familiar with the basketball star LeBron James?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
All right. So if you want to know how LeBron James is still playing at the level he's playing at, after being in the NBA, one of the most punishing sports that we know is available today, outside of football and rugby probably, we look at him and we go, how can he, at his age, how can he keep his body free of long-standing injuries? How can he keep his mind, you know, how, and he tells you how. He has an expert in every area of life that he works with daily. Sports psychologist, a physical trainer, nutritionist, massage. He gets a massage every day of the year, Ren. Okay? So here's a guy that says, I'm in this for the long run, but as good as I am as LeBron James, I'm not going to be my best if I try to do it on my own. I need to keep elevating. You know, my career started in sports psychology. So from 1980 to 1990, I worked mainly with athletes, and I worked in the health and fitness industry. And there would come a point with some of my athletes that I would say, you know what? It's time for you to move on to the next level. Let me tell you the next sports psychologist I want you to work with, because he actually was on the tennis tour. He was in the top 100. So I've got you here, you know, and you're doing freaking awesome. But now you want to go to a level that I've never been at. Let me introduce you to Jim.
Yeah.
That's the world of addiction recovery to me. You know, like, I think we need to keep looking. We can't settle, especially if we're cross-addicting, especially if we're relapsing. You know, and when I say to someone who has multiple relapses, you know, like, I mean, some of the philosophies just drive me crazy. People have said, well, relapse is part of recovery. In the United States, that's in the 12-step rooms. Relapse, I don't know if it is in Europe.
Yeah, I hear it all the time.
You know what? That's called insanity, Ren. You're giving people a foot out the door. You're saying to them, it's okay to relapse. Relapse is part of recovery. It's okay to That's what you're saying.
Yeah, don't worry. It was just a slip.
That's right. And when I say that's what you're saying, I'm not saying you, Ren. You know?
No, I know that. No, that's fine. No, I hear that. I agree with that. I think that, you know, I mean, ultimately, everything that you're talking about boils down to the action that you take. You know, it's like when people first walk into a 12-step meeting or any type of recovery, the point is that the meetings are there for the newcomer to be introduced to the program. The program happens outside of the meetings. So people that become reliant on the meetings, as I did, you know, in early recovery, I would feel miserable and down if I wasn't attending at least a minimum of 4 meetings a week, you know, for a great many years. But then as time went by, I realized that what you're talking about is very true. You know, I started to look down different avenues to get help in other areas that I needed the help. And pretty much where I'm at in my recovery is what you've just described, really. I go to 1 meeting a week religiously because I have a service commitment there. Sometimes I do 2. But my program is outside of the meetings. So, you know, I keep myself spiritually, emotionally and physically well through the stuff that I do. And also I'm now focusing on other things that are enhancing my life. So I agree with you, what you're saying, and I think that it's important to say, isn't it, that this isn't to bash 12-step recovery or any type of recovery whatsoever. This is just about being real. Do you want to just get sober and just have that one area of your life that's better than it was, but then the rest of your life isn't really being worked on? Or do you want to work on every area of your life and essentially be the best version of yourself, which I would hope most people want to be?
Well, and as I mentioned, on the last day of me doing my 130 days in a row of recovery meetings with 12-step, I met one of the greatest influencers of my life. And as a sponsor, I think he was my sponsor for about a month or something like that. It wasn't even that long. We went through the steps, but I come from the world of counseling. So I knew a lot of it. I wasn't practicing it, Ren, but I knew a lot of it. But I want to make another comment here that I think is really important. We just put out an article that's getting a ton of attention, and it's called this. The title is, "Would you marry someone if they were going to give you a commitment of one day at a time?"
Would you marry someone?
So if someone said, "I'll marry you, but I'm going to marry you one day at a time."
Probably not.
Probably not. Why not?
Because you would want a long-term commitment out of that person, wouldn't you? That's
why the philosophy of one day at a time does not work in 12-step. In our program, we say to people, if you want to say you want to recover for life, I'll work with you. If you want to recover one day at a time, I will not work with you. There's no commitment. So every time we say one day at a time, I made it today, great. Now, if we miss tomorrow, that's okay. We just start again the next time, one day at a time. There's no, I played basketball at Syracuse University. If the coach said to me, are you going to come to practice? I said, well, I'm going to come today. I don't know about tomorrow. How long would I last on that team?
It's interesting that, because actually, I mean, and this wasn't intentional, but when I stopped drinking and I entered recovery, I did always say right from the very beginning that I'll never drink ever again. This is forever. The one day at a time thing is something that, it's just, there's many mantras, aren't there, in recovery that people say that they don't necessarily think about, or they don't think about what maybe the harm or maybe the positive that it's doing for them. They don't really consider that too much. So yeah, it's interesting because, it's quite hard hitting when somebody says something to you and you just think, well, hang on a minute, I've been saying that for years. and then somebody goes back and you're a bit like, oh yeah, I see what you mean. It's quite non-committal, isn't it, really?
Very non-committal, you know, and so if you marry someone, you want to marry them for life. You want them to feel secure. You want to feel secure. You want to feel that you have a goal you're going to go through for the rest of your life together, right? You want to see are there going to be challenges marrying someone for the rest of your life? Hell yeah. That's why divorce rates are high. There's a lot of challenges, but it's identical in the world of recovery. I had a guy in who started with me on Monday. Him and his wife came in, and I said to him, now, after we got done talking and everything, I said, now listen. I said, I'm going to tell you something that's going to blow your mind. And if you want to get up and leave and not follow through with the program, that's fine. But I said, I have to be honest with you, just like with everyone. This program is called Holistic Addiction Recovery for Life. So my program is about giving you all the tools you need to stay in recovery, full in recovery, away from cross addictions, away from all the nonsense, for life. Do you know he started crying? Ren, he started crying. He said, I don't know if I can do this. And he broke down in tears. His wife was there. I'm sitting there. I let him cry. He probably cried for about 5 really hard minutes, right? And he looked at me and he goes, I've never been able to do that. I said,
and do you know what, David, as well? It's very overwhelming for people, isn't it? The idea of not only the idea that your life will change that dramatically, but also I think it's a realization of the amount of work you're going to have to do, because it's not easy. Like, I think that the 12-step program is absolute genius. I think that 80 odd years ago they took all the kind of spiritual and psychological material that they could find and put it all together in this one amazing program. But it only takes you so far.
Yeah.
And the amount of work that you have to do on top of that, which is literally like action, loads of writing, like you've said, really getting to the core of these issues and recognizing, like, once you've recognized what your issues are and how it's affecting your relationships, especially your relationships, then doing the work to change it is actually really, really difficult. And the word that Dennis used the other day was humility. You have to have absolute humility and put your ego to one side in order to be able to do this work. And that's a challenge for any human being, really.
It really is. A great wake-up call for me was when I was in the treatment center, and these guys, the counselors, were telling me I had to go to this art class. I go, art class? I don't need art class, and they go, well, it's part of the program. I go, I'm not going. So I went outside, did something, came back to go into my little dorm room, and there was 5 therapists standing in front of my door. And they go, where are you going? I said, I'm going into my room. They say, art class is in 5 minutes. I said, I already told you I'm not going. So we get into this huge fight, almost a physical altercation. I was screaming, they're screaming. People are holding us back from each other. All of a sudden, this one guy screams a word that I won't say right now. And everyone shuts up, and he looks at me and he goes, Essel, your best damn thinking got you into a treatment center. Quit thinking and do what we tell you. It was perfect.
Genius.
It was perfect, and for some reason, Ren, I heard it, which is even more miraculous than he said it. It's more miraculous than I heard it, right? And I said, oh my God. And then he looks at me, he goes, listen, Mr. Big Shot, you're a big shot counselor, minister, author, life coach. He goes, you're all these big titles, and you're a freaking alcoholic. That doesn't go hand in hand in my book. So quit thinking. And, and all it took was a couple statements, and it got me. And so then, as you just said a minute ago, the word we use is surrender to the program. Don't overthink it. Just do what I'm asking you.
Just do it, yeah.
I couldn't, we just passed, Ren, our 400,000th counseling session.
Wow.
I have now done over 400,000 counseling sessions in the last 40 years, okay? I say to people every year, doesn't matter what program we're talking about. Today we're talking about holistic addiction recovery. We do financial freedom. We do all this stuff. But I say this. I say, you know what? Every year, every program is updated.
Yeah.
Because every year, new information's coming out. New information that I implement in holistic addiction recovery or saving relationships. So we want to stay on top of the game. And there's all kinds of changes that are happening right now. I mentioned brain chemistry supplementation for addiction. I've been on amino acid therapy ever since I got sober. I'll never go off the stuff because it helps to balance the brain chemistry that's been damaged for 30 plus years of addiction.
I've never even heard of that before. I'm literally, as soon as you mentioned it, I was going to say after the podcast, I'm going to ask you to send me some details about that, because that is very, very interesting. And I know that you've got a hard out in a couple of minutes, so I've got 3 questions that I want to finish off with that you can answer as quickly or as slowly as you want. The first one is, what does life in recovery mean to you, David?
Freedom.
Yeah, perfect. Just that word, beautiful.
That's it.
The second one is, what would you say to anybody that is struggling, either in recovery or in addiction? What would your words of advice be?
Don't try to do anything more on your own. If it means you need to have 4 people in your corner, find 4 people in your corner. If the sponsor you're working with isn't giving you the time, or you don't feel comfortable, you can't be honest with them, if you're struggling, find someone new. Find a new program, find a new something. Or look in the mirror and say, am I really doing everything I can possibly do to stay clean? Because oftentimes the sponsors and the counselors and the coaches are awesome. It may be us that's lying to ourselves and not doing the work that needs to get done.
Cool. And just one thing I wanted to say before I ask you the last question. They say that if you've done 100,000 hours of anything, that you are considered a master. So therefore, I think Dennis has got it right, really. And the very last question is, what's the most important component of recovery?
It's self-love.
Yeah.
it's realizing that for me, that carrot cake is not self-love. That cigarette is not self-love. That drink, that cocaine line, that pornography, masturbation hour, that's not self-love. So really what recovery is, and what everything you and I are talking about, Ren, is learning how to love ourselves, and it's embracing our insecurities. I love the word vulnerability as well. It's being humble. It's bracing our insecurities. It's embracing our lack of confidence. It's embracing all the holes in our heart, the traumas that have been hurt. The people that have betrayed us, the people that let us down, the people that cheated on us. It's all of that combined into one, because as you've mentioned several times, go into a meeting is great. It's not going to change your life. It's outside of the meeting. It's delving into these areas I just talked about, forgiving people that have hurt you, forgiving yourself for the things that you've done inappropriately, whether you're sober or you're in the years that you were acting out. There's so much to this program of recovery. There's so much more to do. And the end result, that freedom, the freedom to not, when you say I wake up and I'm rarely anxious, oh my God, is that a blessing that you received?
Oh, yeah.
And you gave the blessing to yourself, and that's called self-love, Ren.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Life in Recovery podcast. Where can we find you online, David?
Oh, it's so super easy. TalkDavid.com. TalkDavid.com. It's all I do, Ren, is talk. It's the most appropriate name we could come up with. So go to TalkDavid.com. And by the way, every month we give away a free online video course of the month. The one for this month is Financial Freedom. So if you're interested in learning more about money and finances, and really this is a visual meditation on financial freedom, the one we're offering right now. So you get for 30 minutes to close your eyes and listen to me take you through thought processes to change your approach to your money. I think the next month is Addiction Recovery, a free online course. So when they go to TalkDavid.com, make sure you look for the free online course of the month and sign up for that.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your time.
Ren, I've had a blast with you. And if you'll email me, like you said, in the next day or so, I'll send you information about amino acids. The stuff is incredible.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Okay. Have a great day.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much for listening. And if you've been affected by any of the issues discussed in the podcast, just look underneath the podcast at a range of links to mutual aid organisations. Please don't forget that you can support the podcast at patreon.com/lifeinrecovery. And if you go to the website, www.lifeinrecovery.co.uk, you'll see links to all my social media and all my books. Peace and love, and goodbye for now.